multiple conversations with professionals in the development and business community, also engaging local residents. These were the findings they had in terms of the barriers and assets related to the Eastland site. And you'll note that a lot of the assets are in line with many of the proposals that you saw last month. Other things that we learned, critical was a public-private partnership being required. That was a critical element. We also saw some potential attractive location for residential housing at multiple price points, neighborhood-scale commercial uses, as well as the civic development amenities that were discussed earlier, transit, open space, trails, and cultural facilities, etc. Again, tactical urbanism. So this was an opportunity for residents to come on site, actually provide input in a very informal, kind of fun and engaging way. We estimate that between 150 and 200 people came to this event that was held last April. Finally, last June, the Economic Development Committee requested that staff select and negotiate with the master developer, right? So on the purchase and the redevelopment of the site. And so the direction from the committee was to find a development team. That's important as we look at our criteria as well. And then you can see that later in the year, 4 development teams, those you heard from last month, submitted their proposals. And finally, a multi-departmental evaluation team was selected. This consists of multidisciplinary staff from various departments, but also multi-gender and multi-race. So something that we think is in line with the redevelopment principles of Eastland. And in March 2018, you'll remember last month, the proposals were presented to the committee. And these were the potential development teams by way of review: Greater Charlotte Multiplex for Families, Eastland Community Development Incorporated, Crossland Southeast and Jim Gross Company, as well as Legacy Family Group. So now we'll talk about the evaluation considerations. In other words, sort of prerequisites that a review team would look at to vet whether the proposals that have been submitted really fit in with the redevelopment principles. Do they match the 10 traits of winning cities that really has become the hallmark of a lot of how the city is conducting its business? How surrounding neighborhoods will benefit from the proposed redevelopment and use the site once development is implemented? Will the development team partner and work with potential nonprofits and public agency partners? What would be their plan for that? What are the mix of uses and estimated price points of each use? And finally, how is parking addressed? Now, these are considerations that went into the formation of the recommended components. In other words, the criteria that we would recommend that staff use, as the chair said earlier. This is the beginning of a discussion, but we are basically making known what criteria or components we're recommending. So the qualifications and experience of the development team. So has this development team worked on similar developments, particularly those that might be over 50 acres in size? Their financial qualifications and strategy. Will they present a financially viable plan to be a solid private partner, given that there will be a lot of resources that will need to be matched in terms of city resources to private resources? The project approach and timeline. What will be the construction timeline? How would they go about finding out physical feasibility, market feasibility, and so forth, and really determining what could be actual viable uses on the site? And finally, master planning and due diligence. We talked before about a lot of community engagement that's occurred. The master planning and due diligence phase would be where further community engagement would happen once a development team is chosen. Finally, again, some specific questions related to the financial component. I mentioned earlier that there's a strong emphasis on the financial component. the ownership and management of the development, how it would be structured to ensure feasibility and sustainability. What would be the expectations of the city in terms of a public-private partnership? Is there a short-term or long-term commitment from the development partners? What are the terms for purchase or lease of the site? What is the anticipated debt equity composition? Would public incentives be requested? And finally, who the proposed development team members are and the relevant background and experience of each. So in other words, is there financial viability, and is there the capacity and capability of this partner to remain a long-term partner to the city? In terms of proposed next steps, as we mentioned earlier, we'll be discussing these evaluation criteria today and perhaps at our next meeting in May, as well as potentially taking a recommendation of the development team to the committee in June, and finally, a city council briefing and action in July. Now, these are recommended next steps and a recommended timeline. Obviously, it's the prerogative of the committee and council to figure out the actual timing. So with that concludes the presentation.
If I could, can you go back to the evaluation criteria and just keep that up? Because I think that's going to be the focus of the discussion of the meeting, and I just want that to continue to be on the screen for the committee as well as our guests.
Kevin, thank you. Staff, thank you. Deborah. So now, committee, this is our opportunity to raise questions. Let's have discussion. We want to do this in 2 meetings, so don't feel like we have to do everything today. I prefer us taking advantage of our new assistant city manager who will start on May 7th. So I would like for Tracy to have some input as well. So that's why I think we need another meeting on May 24th as well to talk about this topic. So great presentation we had back here among the 4 developers, and I see most of the representatives are here. This committee want to personally thank you all for your vision. And now it's our time to have a real economic development committee meeting that we like to have. So District 5, I'm going to start off with you, sir, to start off the discussion. District 1, you butt East Lamar. I'd like to hear your thoughts. And the young lady who kept pushing this and pushing it, Dimple Ashmerrill as well. So Dimple, thank you for all your passion for the last 8 months. So ED committee is our time. Mr. Newton?
Yeah, well, thank you, Mr. Chair. So as many folks are aware, and I know our council is aware, I held a community meeting on Saturday to discuss the 4 proposals more in depth and gather additional community input. And I want to thank the city staff as well for their hard work on all of this. I don't want to overlook the opinions of the folks that are surrounding the property, many of whom are here today. And I think so the feedback I received really focused primarily upon the guiding principles. And I think, so there was a slide that I believe illustrates what those guiding principles are. And I assume, so the principles that were, this one right here.
Yep.
Yeah, so the principles that were created by Charlotte East, and I think for the sake of brevity and to get it all on the slide, I'm sure that it was condensed somewhat, but I think there was more meat to the bones of these principles, and I heard a lot of that on Saturday, particularly as it pertained to recreational amenities, retail, commercial amenities for the site, something that would uphold what I believe the community perceives as the promise of Eastland, understanding full well that the box mall is antiquated, but nevertheless, we have an amenity depletion in the area, and something that would restore some of what Eastland meant to us and the amenities it provided. So I heard a lot of that. I think there was a lot of support for a particular proposal in the question, and the community who's here can, maybe would back this, but a lot of support for a particular proposal was the second one. And the question, I think, within the community is financial viability, and I'm really happy to see. So as we talk about these guiding principles, and we look, so we look down the line at some of these other slides, right there, financial qualifications and strategy. I think that that's going to be very important moving forward, and I hope that we focus. We really focus on that, and then of course on the tail end. We will have conversations pertaining to whatever ask there is and the gap, right, to achieve the realization of a particular proposal. And I want to say this too, and then I'll pass this along. I think there are a lot of questions pertaining to the need for a tactical urbanist approach. Given some of the interest that we have seen, and I think that that should also be taken into consideration. And I'm with you, Mr. Chair, that I think we might be getting ahead of ourselves to be making any decisions today while we await the Assistant City Manager coming on and playing a role in this too on May 7th. Having said all that, I'll yield my time or my speaking to the next person.
Okay. Thank you, Matt. Committee, Mr. Larkin, District 1, this is you, but it's very important to your constituent as well. Any initial thoughts, sir?
Yeah, I've gotten emails from a lot of my constituents as well as Councilmember Newton's constituents, and I think one of the things that a lot of them were kind of honing in on was they wanted more detail from some of these proposals that, and obviously given the dynamics of the way it was presented, we probably weren't going to be able to see the full proposal, but I think with the criteria that Mr. Dick was referencing, I'd like to see, as a non-committee member, I'd like to see the committee and staff work to kind of pare down, because while there was value, I think, in all four proposals, I'm guessing that as the committee and staff evaluate these, a couple will rise to the top. And I think it'll be easier for the committee, the full council, and the community to analyze and compare 2 or 3 proposals instead of 4.
Okay.
So I think that's something that could be done relatively quickly if we feel like not all of these proposals meet the ask or meet the expectations or have the experience and financial ability to execute. So I think that would help kind of narrow the focus for everybody involved in this process. But again, to echo the chair, I appreciate all 4 people that brought proposals forward. I think there was exciting parts of each one. But let's distill down to the ones that we really think can pull this off and are meeting the expectations we've set forward.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Ashmere.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank our staff for bringing a very comprehensive evaluation criteria. It checks multiple boxes based on the emails that I have received: sustainability, community needs, catalyst, bringing opportunities. So I think it's very comprehensive. And we came a long way since we had started this last year with tactical urbanism and developer scan forums, where we had over 30 developers. And now to actually see at this point where we have 4 solid proposals, it is very exciting for our city. I would like to add one more item. If we can also look at the types of jobs and opportunities it's going to bring for our residents, I think that's also a very important factor that we gotta consider.
Thank you. So, committee, a couple of things I think we need to discuss. One is what role or how much affordable housing will we think will be appropriate for East Lamar? And secondly, Councilmember Larkin made a comment, but is there opportunity to collaborate? We have 4 proposals. Is there some synergy there that we can direct staff to and ask staff to look at that further. So let's start off with the first one, affordable housing, and what does that look like here on the East Lamar site? And I have my chair to my left. So, Madam Chair, your thoughts about affordable housing? Oh, excuse me.
Vice President.
Diversity price point housing. I'm sorry, I got it.
First prize point.
Councilmember Mayfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, one, I want us to be cognizant of the reality that we are 9 council cycles into this conversation.
That's true.
When we go back and look at this isn't something that started in the last year or 2 years or even 5 years. It goes back to 2003.
Wow.
And we've had multiple iterations just during the 7 years that I've been here with this conversation. So as the market continues to change, that's what's going to determine a lot of it. Thankfully, today, the state has that 25% mandate of any housing to have that minimum of 30. We just had our first housing retreat last Friday. There is follow-up to that because for me, before staff can come back with any specific recommendations, we got to hear from our partners regarding our language and how our language supports what the state and federal language is, so we can't have any language without listening from each of our partners and having them present to the committee. I do believe that we do need to create the ability to identify a percentage. We haven't gotten to the point of knowing what that is yet.
Okay.
But there should be an expectation of which the original, when you go back through the evaluation, it's always called for us to have mixed income throughout the facility. It's just a matter of us getting more information. For me, the biggest piece is going to be which group has the ability to raise the equity and identify the additional resources. Because government is, which everyone knows, gap.
Right.
Well, we've already calculated millions that we put into this project in acquiring it, demolishing, clearing, brownfields, everything else. So that also is a piece we must take into consideration. How much have we already contributed to this, and any additional, that's gonna be a part of a total package that the city brings to the table. So although we do need to have a conversation, it's not, it wouldn't be fair to identify what that number or percentage is outside of the mandate of 25% minimum. Anything additional, like, I would love to say if it's gonna be a for-profit, if it's gonna be a market developer, then we need a commitment on them accepting X number of vouchers. I just don't know what that number is yet. And as a committee, we haven't had a chance to talk about it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Good, doctor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and sorry for being a little bit late there. So
You have a real job. We understand. Man. Come on.
sometimes those teeth don't come out as easy. But I feel like I caught most of the presentation here from the staff. I'm excited about this. You don't get this much public land in a lot of places. And while I don't represent East Charlotte, I support East Charlotte in the sense that we share a lot of those same type of amenity deficiencies, as the council member said, on the west side. And so excited about these 4 proposals. So thank you to the teams for kind of putting together some great proposals. And I know the uphill climb will be on staff to really determine all this evaluation. And the community should get a round of applause too for your input on this and continued input. I'm sure there'll be more going forward. I'm very interested in how any of these projects can really help leverage other public investments, whether that be current ones that are there now or future planned. I know on the evaluation criteria, it mentions that a little bit. How can these development teams partner with other nonprofits and public agencies? I think that's part of our role as public officials, is to figure out ways that we can best leverage those other types of public investments. And I guess this question would be for either Mr. Dick or Ms. Campbell. Is there going to be a scorecard from these types of qualifications and components, or is it just kind of a general summary of answering these questions? I'm seeing the head nod, so.
Yeah, the components would lead to a numerical score based upon weights we would assign.
Got it. Okay. Good. Good. And then as far as the housing is concerned, Ms. Mayfield pretty much summed it up as far as the same type of opinions. I want to see how can we push the envelope a little bit, especially if we know we can leverage some of the lower income housing against the perspective of market rate and what that looks like. Again, I'm sure we'll have many conversations in hand committee about that, but that's important. However, I'm not sure housing should be the driving factor of this.
Yep,
I think that there's an opportunity here when we think about the type of neighborhood center that this can be, and that really all these proposals help drive towards. It's more of an economic development, more of an amenity conversation, but housing is a component of that without a doubt. I don't want that to be the top of the list for sure. So, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Good Doctor. Mr. Newton?
Yes, so I wanted to touch on well, speaking, I guess to Council Member Ajmira's point, I think it's very important that we keep an eye on the economic driver this site can be, particularly from the standpoint of a potential tax base that can be created, jobs and opportunities for the area. And in that regard, I think that for me, I question some of the wisdom of a substantial infill of diverse price point housing, particularly understanding the concept of tactical urbanism and the idea that the approach should be to either maintain a scale of AMI or otherwise raise AMI. We have a couple of proposals that would lead, so to Councilmember Harlow's point, would lead with residential. And if that's the case, then to attract commercial development and really create an economic driver at the site, I think we have to be very cognizant, right, of surrounding concentration or concentrations of diverse price point and maybe an undercutting of AMI with diverse price point at this site. So let me be clear about that. And then again, too, I think, so what we saw on Monday, right, is that there isn't always a 25% mandate. But I wanted to just make that, clear. Also echo the point of the chair pertaining to collaboration and proposals. And then just underscore that point that from the standpoint of providing jobs and opportunities, if there is a proposal that has the ability, I think that's the question, the ability to provide that up front with infill afterwards, maybe we should take that particular proposal very, maybe prioritize it a little bit more from the standpoint of even a tactical urbanist methodology.
Ms. Campbell?
Thank you, Ms. Mayfield. So just quickly, for those of you who are tired of standing, in room 267, we are streaming this meeting live. So if you want to sit, please take that opportunity to, second floor, 267 is available. And just for clarification in terms of the affordable, of the diverse price point housing discussion about state mandates, that is only related to if a developer use low-income housing tax credit where there is a mandate. So I just wanted to clarify that for the general audience. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
My colleague, Councilman Winston.
I keep my comments short. From everything I've heard from constituents, really since this summer, and just I moved to Charlotte kind of when Eastland Mall was kind of on the deathbed. That there's a distinct desire for this site to be an attraction to drive people to this area. And I think that's pretty clear in all the presentations and where the thinking is going of staff and the committee. But to keep in mind that we don't always have opportunities to deal with pieces of land like this, that we have to think about it in ways that doesn't just activate the area inside the borders of the Eastland site, but that really does activate a radius around it. And I think one of the ways that needs to be thought of is really how the transportation infrastructure surrounding it interacts with the different neighborhoods and different streets, especially when we think about the Central Ave, Sharon Amity, Albemarle kind of triangle there. How can we, it's not really made to be a walkable community. You know, it was walkable because it was inside of a building at one point in time. But we really have the opportunity to change up the infrastructure in a way that really does support the kind of development that not only that we want within the borders of the Eastland site, but as we kind of transform our city into a more dense urban environment. If you tried to cross Albemarle Road or Central Ave or driven, you know, in through this area at any time during rush hours or the evenings, it's not sufficient for where we want to go as a city. So we really need to take advantage of really amending our streetscapes in whatever project gets moved on to the next levels.
Thank you, sir. Just a couple comments, and I want to go back to Dr. Hollow and the, well, we don't have it up there, but valuation consideration. And we talked about the nonprofit and the public agency. I do think, committee, this would be a great opportunity for us to be as collaborative as possible. I was a member of Simmons Y when I was over on the east side and back in 1989. And so, staff, I would like for us to reach out to the Y and see if there's an interest of Simmons Y participating on the site. I think that's one of that Y might have been built in the early 1970s. And so we talking about rebranding the east side. It'll be nice to see if the Y has some interest in being part of this rebranding exercise. Secondly, the school has started first. So when we talk about work, live, and play, I will hope that we have a vision that really talks about work, live, and play. So we have a school. Is there opportunity now for the second, to me, the public entity is a library there on site? I think the school is going to be a magnet school. When you're talking about education and job opportunities, one of the proposals, or both, I think a couple of proposals talk about after-school programming. And so I do think we need to make sure we look as holistic as possible about really bringing as many collaborative partners to the table. So any thoughts? And Mr. Bakari from District 6.
Thank you. There's just two things I wanted to relate quickly. And I know this isn't the last meeting, and I think that's a good thing. When we get to the last point where we're going to weigh in or go to full council or whatever, I think it's incredibly important to understand what is the city expectation from each of those. I mean, it's impossible to say which one you like without understanding that. And specifically, I mean, we own the land. So what is the fair market value of that land being one part of it, and how are we going to deploy that paired with whatever else they might ask for? So I think that's just absolutely critical in a decision. And two, and this is just more of a gut feeling I have, you know, it's really important that we have an idea the community likes and supports. It's also really important that whoever gets chosen can actually raise the capital to do it. But I think the most important thing is that 10 years from now, the person who ends up getting this and doing this deal understands what they're doing, has a proven track record, and at the end of the day, doesn't build something that isn't viable and then they're bankrupt and then we're buying the site back and demolishing something else. So I just, you know, we have 4 great groups that have presented, you know, but I don't want to belabor the point here. We didn't do an RFP, we didn't have to, but do we have all of the players at the table that have the best? This is like our one shot here to get this right again right now and not put us back in the same position. So I just strongly encourage us, as we're doing the analysis before the end of this, to make sure we know that we don't try to micromanage and say, we'll do this, 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 but we make more attention towards this person's going to build something the community likes, but is also going to be viable, and it's going to withstand the test of time. It's not going to all of a sudden die a slow death and we're back at the same table.
Oh, yes, I did.
Mr. Newton?
So I just wanted to convey some of the sentiment from my community. So the folks in East Charlotte, particularly around the Eastland Mall site, I strongly believe, and I know I've been told, we've received the emails as well. The community just wants to have the same level of amenities that are provided elsewhere in the city. And I think in that regard, providing those amenities that would also include, right, job creation, economic growth, et cetera, particularly on the corridor, provide a destination to Councilmember Winston's point, right? There needs to be a reason, right, for a Gold Line extension, the streetcar coming down, and that's something that, you know, we would want because we have that elsewhere in the city and we are deprived of that in East Charlotte. But I think from that standpoint, it's important that we not overlook those needs. Those are the needs that are going to provide upward mobility and social capital in an area that already has a concentration of diverse price point housing. And so I just want us to be cognizant of that moving forward. The question that I've heard pertaining to collaboration with the YMCA, I don't think anybody is against a collaboration, but the question I've heard is what will happen to the Simmons Y site? So we have, you know, we do have an existing YMCA, and with 69 acres, which is expansive, but also I think, given the scope of some of the proposals, is actually relatively small, particularly when you're talking about including infrastructure within it. You know, I just wanted to pose that particular question pertaining to the YMCA, and then also just reiterate maybe some need for you know, collaboration, right? Because there are a lot of really fantastic ideas that each of the proposals presented.
So let's talk about for 1 minute what's in our toolbox for assistance. And so Ms. Campbell and Mr. Dick, I know we still have 400, and correct my numbers, but $400,000 left over that we did not spend for phase 2. We just paid for the Jacob study, and then there's some CIP dollars, and then there was a small bucket for amateur sports. Did I leave out any other tools that we have available on the Eastland Mall on this site?
I think that what you stated pretty much represents the
Okay.
buckets. Obviously, some things would be subject to budget.
Okay. Oh, Ms. Ashmere?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have gotten several emails specifically on environment sustainability. As a chair of environment, I think it's very important that I make this point. Can't emphasize enough that we gotta have more green space where people can walk and connect to nature trails. And I know Ms. Woods have been a strong advocate for that. So I want to make sure that I relay her point. Among many other residents on the east side, they do want some green space where people can go and have meetings or have just family gatherings. So green space is very important. And also, we got to embrace our natural features. Also, if we can consider sustainability from energy efficiency perspective when it comes to construction. So sustainability in terms of economics, but also environment.
Okay. So committee, we got 3 other agenda items. I want to be very sensitive to this because we have a lot of citizens from the east side who pour a lot of time and energy into this. So let me go through evaluation considerations so we'll make sure we're giving staff what they need. When you look at, well, Kevin, go back to the consideration. Is anything on that slide that we need to add? Someone mentioned job and opportunities. Kevin, we can add that. Ms. Campbell, anything else, committee, we're missing from the evaluation part?
I think we just heard.
The environment
Environmental,
sustainability.
thank you. Environment and sustainability. Mr. Winston?
This might be part of the 10 traits of the winning cities, but I think it needs to explicitly say, you know, it really does support and cultivate the diverse ethnic makeup of the east side. This is something that will promote further growth as, you know, kind of an international destination and kind of hub for our city.
Okay.
further growth and diversity? Is that?
Yeah.
Can that be added? Wouldn't
Yeah,
that be under bullet 3? How will the surrounding neighborhoods benefit? Because the surrounding neighborhoods is where all the diversity is.
And it might be in, like I said, it might be in the second one, part
In
of
the
the 10
winning
traits.
cities,
of
'cause we
winning
talk about the
cities.
Big 10.
I think we
Yeah.
do need to be explicit about that, though, as, you know,
That's
right.
especially
So you
given the
don't lose.
segregated nature of our
Right.
city.
Exactly
That's something that we'll always have to be cognizant of, intentional about.
Right.
Don't lose what makes it.
District 1?
Just to reiterate Mr. Winston's point, I would agree that what Mr. Winston was just saying is a benefit to the surrounding neighborhoods, but not everybody agrees on what are benefits. And so I think we do need to be very intentional about saying that we as a city do believe that that diversity is a benefit, because others might disagree.
Yes, sir.
I second that.
Dr. Hollow, we good?
Oh, I'm good, yep.
Councilman, we good? One, we good? Staff, I think evaluation consideration, we're all on board with Mr. Winston, Ms. Ashmere, and the job opportunities point. Now let's go to the evaluation components. I think we heard loud and clear, and thank you, District 6, for reiterating over and over the second bullet point, financial qualification strategy. Is anything we missing from here, committee? Have we captured everything?
Mr. Chair, do you think with the comments from my colleagues under the project approach and timeline, we just need to reiterate their last statement regarding the sensitivity to neighborhoods?
To the neighborhood, yeah.
Because that also can be interpreted differently when you look at just the total diversity that's in the community. Because I think we still narrow it down to three, maybe four categories, and you have so many more that are represented in our community.
So by sensitivity to neighborhoods, is incorporation of community engagement related to that? So that-
Oh, the fourth
That's
point.
found in
Yeah.
the fourth bullet point, is that?
Well, that's why I was asking if the last comments that were made by my colleague, Mr. Winston and Mr. Eggleston, just needed to be reiterated again under the project approach and timeline. So that it's clear that that's a focus and a priority.
I have Ms. Campbell, then Ms. Ashmere. Ms. Campbell?
And that's probably in terms of its relationship to the community or sensitivity to the community. There's probably a physical development perspective in terms of sensitivity to the neighborhood, but there's also a social. And I think
Bingo.
that's
Yes.
what you were talking about for the most part in terms of the social integration. I also have a question on the diverse price point housing, where you actually feel like that should be incorporated. Should it be incorporated as an evaluation consideration or one of the components? And I think I would advocate for potentially evaluation consideration rather than a component. Because we did not explicitly instruct the development teams to bring back
Perfect.
something that incorporated this. But I think it should certainly be a consideration as they move forward in refining and getting more specifics in terms of their development proposal to
Okay.
include
So consideration.
consideration.
Yeah,
Everybody likes that, committee? You okay?
and I think we
Well,
kind of hit, we kind of hit it here in that, 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth point on the considerations.
Right.
What are the mixes of uses and estimated price points of each?
And that's what I was thinking.
But the specifics component of it is something that shouldn't be understated. I think, we've seen kind of the umbrella. So now let's really peek under the hood a little more. We're gonna dig into all the other stuff around, experience and all these other things. So might as well dig into that too.
And I think, if I could, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
If I could continue. And I think that this is not just about residential. I think this bullet is also encompassing the commercial piece
Exactly.
as well. Because if we go to one of the principles of being equitable economic development, that means more small businesses as well.
So, Mr. Chair, so is that, that consideration in relationship to their plan and willingness to put those forward, but not necessarily the exactness of numbers because some of the due diligence is gonna reveal
Right.
Exactly.
specifics, right?
Mr. Newton?
Yeah, so I would push back slightly against that from the standpoint of diverse price point housing at this particular site, because I don't know if it would stand up to the methodology of what we're trying to create. And at the same time, I question the legality of that as well. So to Mr. Dick's point, volunteering of information, but to make that some standard, I guess, to be met, that I think might be a little outside of our wheelhouse. Wanted to also mention, so I don't know if this would be something particularly or something we can kind of pigeonhole into considerations, but I think we can't miss an opportunity to institute something dynamic and unique at the site, because that would I think would rebrand an area that's in dire need of some sort of institution of positivity, and so 10 years, 15 years ago, I think the Eastland Mall, Eastland Mall itself was a source of pride. Not just for East Charlotte, but for Charlotte as a whole. It created identity. All of that is lost. And so if we have an opportunity, and I think this should be something that is included in considerations, if we have an opportunity to reinstitute that and have something located in an area that many people no longer drive through, right? They drive around. I think we can't overlook that opportunity, and there should be some emphasis placed on that.
So we got about 2 more minutes on this, and I have 3 people in the hopper. Follow-up, Councilmember Mayfield, Councilmember Ashmill, and Councilmember Eggleston.
So, Mr. Dick, I think really when I'm also looking at the sensitivity, we're also thinking about the impact. So we have examples throughout the entire city of where our construction that we approve then caused major challenges to smaller businesses. So when we think about that sensitivity and that diversity, we have to have in consideration on the front end that type of impact. When we're talking about housing, we cannot continue to make the same mistakes that we've made in the past. Many years ago, council had the ability to put the language in place along the blue line, and they did not do that. Council had the ability to put some different language in place with Bright Walk. No one ever anticipated Bright Walk to take off the way that it did and for it to sell at the levels that it did once development started happening. So when we talk about doing things differently, we have to be cognizant that we need to have the language on the front end in place to protect, so as that growth happens, we're not then 15 years later having the same conversation and trying to figure out how to put in something that we could have identified on the front end. We also have another opportunity with Bryant Park. When it was sold, the idea was townhomes starting at 140, single family attached starting at 220. Those houses are selling over $400,000 today in less than a year. So we have to figure out if there's a commitment to making sure that the city is accessible and housing is accessible throughout the city, then we can still have the language in place. And as the development comes along, the project is going to be what it's going to be, but we've got to put the language in place and show that there's a commitment all across, because no one ever expected Southwest Charlotte to develop the way that it has. But it has been nothing but 7 years of growth. We're now trying to figure out how to get housing that's for lower income families on Freedom Drive. So we cannot keep saying, making decisions based on what we see today, because again, we're in 2018 and this conversation started in 2003.
Thank you, Ms. Mayfield. Ms. Ashmill?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'd like to echo what Councilmember Mayfield said about equitable economic development. Got to be sensitive to our existing businesses along the corridor. They should also be given opportunities to participate in this development, especially the businesses that have survived the downturn and have been there for years. So I want to be very intentional about not displacing any existing businesses along the corridor.
Thank you. Mr. Larkin?
I won't open the can of worms, given our time constraints, as to whether or not this should be part of our criteria, but I'd like for Mr. Dick or someone from the city attorney's office to either confirm or correct my understanding that on a parcel we own, it absolutely would be legal and within our rights and scope to dictate the housing that we would want to see there and the price points. Because that's
Bob
my
Hageman,
understanding.
Mr. Hageman, can you come to
I was
the?
anticipating that question.
Well, then hopefully you had an answer.
I do have an answer.
Bob, come on. This is our city attorney, well-known, Mr. Bob Hageman. No pressure, sir, no pressure.
Infamous.
So that is correct. It's important to recognize the distinction between your authority in the regulatory context and your authority in the transactional context. And as I've consistently advised the council, in the regulatory context, particularly when you're engaged in zoning, I have opined that you lack the authority to mandate particular housing price points. However, here you're dealing in a transactional context, and you're free to require whatever you want to require.
Gotcha.
I don't want
Got
to
it.
overstate that, but in terms of the question, you can dictate what it is that you're buying for with the city's land and potentially money.
I'll ask you later.
I will get you. Oh, no, I want him to have a final word, so go ahead, Art. No, I want
Does
him-
that apply if we sell the property or only if we maintain ownership of it?
Both, either.
Thanks.
Correct,
So any transaction.
correct.
And
And
the
we have
la-
done that, and we have done that.
Last final word, Mr. Newton, and we're gonna move on to the second item.
As we move forward, I would suggest it's very important that we don't overlook the principles and values we espouse, ensuring that for any communities we create, there are supporting amenities to make those communities successful. I'm with Councilmember Ajmira 1,000,000%. Creating a space for our local business, particularly creating a space that would encourage owner-operated business, I think is very important. But at the same time, too, I think in a much grander scope here, we need to ensure that there is economic growth at this particular site. And I think that is a priority of mine because it's what's going to support any community that already currently exists, right? Let me just be clear about that. We have a number of diverse price point communities surrounding this site and beyond, and any community that is placed, so any population that's placed on site. So I just wanted to just say, from the standpoint of our upward mobility principles, social capital principles, and everything that we read in the Upward Mobility Task Force report, there has to be a balance, and in my estimation, that balance is going to have to incorporate surrounding communities that already have an amenity depletion currently existing. And that's what, it's what's good for East Side Charlotte. Also, ultimately, it's what's going to be good for the entirety of Charlotte. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So I would say this committee, thank you so much for the conversation. This is part one. Part two is May 24th at noon. Staff, I will ask that we try to hold it in room 267 with just tremendous interest. I think CH14 is too short. Let the church say amen. Amen. So let's make sure we can get room 267. And thank you all so much. And Deborah, the next item is disparity study.
Sir, and I was wondering, since there is an action requested
Okay.
for item 3,
Yeah.
you may want to take that and then move to disparity study. Which one? That's okay. We're gonna
Committee,
move on.
you okay with that? Let's go to Memorial Stadium because it's an action item, and then we'll come back to the disparity study.
Finish writing it because
It's going to take one. On the sports radio, podcast on WFMZ retweeted my tweet of New Jersey. It's like, come on, man, get a New Jersey. Matt Newton's game.
Mr. Kimball.
Maybe 25 is not wearing a Newton jersey.
Wait a minute. Okay.
yeah, that is pretty. It does seem like.
How are you? You can't even go on.
that number and main combination is not available.
I can do it like that on mine. Oh, yes.
Because that would be a timeless one.
It would. You never know.
Can you read that?
Thomas, we're about to get started. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all. Now we're about to talk about Memorial Stadium, and a long-time deal maker who really loves this community is with us. I think it's his first presentation in quite some time. Glad to have you back, Ron.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Where it says
Okay, everyone,
all your questions
please.
centered around Memorial, not Veterans. Yeah, we're not talking about that.
Right.
Yep. Actually, make sure the Nancy. Yeah, get the door, because I think it's going to be not a closed session, but we just need everybody to move her.
You haven't got the terms yet.
3 mil on.
Todd, can you, thank you, Todd.
For the term.
Yes.
Up to. I don't know if they'll have an answer for it right away, but I want to go back in.
Hey, Bob, do you, oh, Thomas.
How many years?
Right, but it's reduced spending on literal payback.
On those two periods, on those two.
Mr. Kimball, it's all yours, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I do want to state for the record that I am wearing a Panthers shirt.
Yes,
Not as gloriously as you all are. Y'all look great. And I'm very pleased to be with you today. I know it's been a while since I've been with you, and it's great to be back in the action, the enthusiasm, the great energy that I see from the new council and what you're doing to tackle big issues in our community. I would also like to note that in the room we have Mark Foster. Mark is from Mecklenburg County, Assistant County Manager, and Mark has been an excellent partner in the conversations that we've had over the last couple of years. I'm here today to talk about an opportunity for a partnership with Memorial Stadium. It started a few years ago. It started back in 2016. And you know that today what we want to do is talk about the history and the background, but most of all what we want to do is talk about the requested committee action that we're coming forward today to talk to you about. In 2016, there was a conversation that occurred. It was widely reported in the media, both in the Business Journal, the Charlotte Observer, and has been recounted many times since 2016, that we were working on a partnership to bring the opportunity for Memorial Stadium to be enhanced, to be renovated, to do it in a smaller way than the way that eventually came forward, which was a proposal for Major League Soccer. But what we had was an opportunity with the county and with the Charlotte Independents and Charlotte Hounds to come forward with a one-third partnership to renovate and improve and enhance Memorial Stadium. It was an $8.33 million for each of the three partners, a total of $25 million. That partnership opportunity and proposal eventually went by the wayside for two very important and good reasons. We had an officer-involved shooting right after the meeting had occurred where we were talking about this, and then you know that a Major League Soccer proposal advanced in this community for consideration and eventually now has rested, kind of put on the back burner and on the side. So in the last many months, the county has come back and has had a conversation themselves about an opportunity to enhance and improve Memorial Stadium. As you have heard in many of your council meetings, costs of construction have risen in the last couple of years. We've had 12%, 16% increase in pricing and construction costs over the last 2 years. The county went back and reassessed and re-examined all of the work that was done 2 years ago in 2016. And they have come forward and actually voted on at this point in time a $31.7 million renovation, a little bit higher than the $25 million that was there a couple of years ago. Yet the $31.7 million renovation and improvement and upgrade includes a grass field rather than a synthetic, hybrid, versatile, flexible you can use it all the time kind of field in that $31.7 million upgrade to Memorial Stadium. So we have been talking, staff to staff, about a revised proposal, not of $31.7 million, but the opportunity to infuse up to $3 million more of tourism dollars that would then put in this synthetic field that would allow much more versatile, frequent use of Memorial Stadium. I'm going to walk you through the terms of what we've been talking about. I think you'll find it attractive. I won't be the judge of that. You will be the judge of that. And we would like to entertain your questions after we have the opportunity to explain what the proposal looks like. This would be the upgraded Memorial Stadium project. It would be an actual tear down of the existing facility and build back in almost the exact same footprint. But the field that's been there since 1938 is a field that is a little bit smaller than necessary for soccer. And since the Charlotte Independents and the Charlotte Hounds are also going to be a partner in this, we've got to create a larger field footprint in the new stadium, but you will see that how we will accomplish that in the coming slides. The summary of the county planned improvements, it would be, when rebuilt, it would be a capacity of about 12,450. It would preserve the historic wall that you all know is part of the history of this. It would reinstall or re-memorialize that wall in a different manner than its current footprint on the perimeter of the field, but it would be preserved, saved, and in some architecturally way reinstalled in the stadium. It would also preserve the Veterans Memorial aspect of this, because that has been the case since 1938 when the stadium opened. And we would need an enlarged playing field, not only for all sports, but all kinds of activities, whether it's concerts, whether it's community events, any kind of event that can use the playing surface, and making this playing surface as versatile and always able to be played upon, even if you had rain, snow, bad weather elements, because when you play on a grass field, you have a wear and tear element that you have to have the field rest, and then if you have rain, that causes the rest to have to be longer, and the tearing up of the field, if you play during a rain event, really does destruction to a grass field. The amount of investment that the county is intending to make is the $31.7 million. We've provided a highlight of the breakdown of those costs in the materials that are in front of you. And by the way, all of you have this PowerPoint presentation as part of your packages. We're going over it here on the screen. But the 31.7 is broken down in the following manner. But it is a grass field in the $31.7 million. So the proposed terms of how the city's tourism money would come into play is that this would be a one-time capital payment of up to $3 million. The $3 million would be for the subsurface drainage kind of system that would have to be in place for a synthetic field. It would be for the acquisition of the field itself. It would be for the installation. It would be a playing surface of a new field that is, in some standard terms and in some lingo terms, a FIFA 2 compliant field. It means it needs to be able to be played on by people for comfort, for their knees, for their hips, for their ankles, making sure that they don't get hurt on some of the synthetic type fields, but it would also be kind of a hybrid synthetic field that would have durability, wearability. It would have the ability to stand up to continuous play on that particular field. The payment, if you are in agreement with these terms, would be made as last money into the project. The project, as they move forward, they expect to open it for play in 2021. Correct. 2021. And ours would be last money in. They would upgrade the stadium, build the stadium, and one of the last pieces would be the field installation. And our money then would go into the equation. It would be part of some other debt instrument that we issue with all the other things that we are doing in the hospitality and tourism flow of funds. So it would be $3 million that we put into the project as last money in, and we would include that as part of our debt financing with other projects that we have in our tourism category. In return for us putting that kind of money in, up to $3 million, and the county has to document the costs of up to $3 million. So if it's less than $3 million, we would pay the less amount, but it's up to $3 million. If it goes over $3 million, they hold the risk. It's up to $3 million of documented costs. In return, as you know, as we've negotiated many different projects over the many years, because we are putting city-controlled dollars, and the Charlotte Regional Visitor Authority is our partner, we have always asked that if we put this money in, we need access and availability of rent-free use days. And so the county and we have negotiated that for the up to $3 million into the stadium, we would receive, city and CRVA, for our consideration, we would receive 5 rent-free use days per year for 15 consecutive years, so that we have the opportunity to book events that we feel are appropriate for our community and for bringing visitors to this community. And I think that is a very good consideration by the county to allow us to have that kind of involvement in the setting of those extra days. I will tell you that the county is very excited about the opportunity to book continuous use of Memorial Stadium, because if you've watched it like I have for the last 8 years or so, there hasn't been much activity in the Memorial Stadium itself. And the vibrancy that can be created with a new stadium in this location with this kind of upgrade and renovation would be spectacular for the neighborhood. I know the county is also considering putting additional funds in Independence Park. So this is a great combination of stadium and park, similar in some respects to what we did with BB&T Ballpark and Romare Bearden Park. There are a lot of synergies and a lot of opportunities here to really capitalize on the partnership that we are bringing forward with Mecklenburg County. And again, the source of the city investment would not be property tax dollars, sales tax dollars. It would be dollars that accrue from hotel, motel taxes, food and beverage, car rental taxes, the regular tourism taxes that occur and are received in our community. The county has been an outstanding partner. If you look back at all of the economic development projects that we've worked on over the years, they have been substantial. And even as it relates to tourism funding, they have been a willing partner in CIAA basketball tournament, which is now, we know, more than a basketball tournament. It's a community plus for this Charlotte-Mecklenburg area. They have been a great partner on the ACC football championship. They've been a great partner on the Belk Bowl. They've been a great partner on the NBA All-Star Game. They have stepped up to the table to partner with us in many different ways, in many different respects, to grow our footprint in this Charlotte-Mecklenburg region. And we're proud of the fact that we know we have pressures on our tourism taxes for many other things. And they willingly, the county did, entered into conversations with us and said, we understand that you may not be able to put in the $8.33 million that we had talked about a couple of years ago. But I think we found a very good space and a very good place that will allow us to have the kind of partnership that we want with our county folks. And it's something that the community will be proud of. We'll bring new visitors to this community, and we will also allow it to be used for our local residents. I didn't even mention the Battle of the Bands and the historic black colleges and universities opportunities that are going to be created here and maybe in the future at Bank of America Stadium, because there are events that we can move back and forth between the larger venue and then the smaller venue known as Memorial Stadium. It'll be much more affordable for the kinds of events that we would have in Memorial Stadium for a promoter that may want to come in and do those kinds of events. Again, a picture of the synthetic field. I will tell you that on the schedule that the county has provided, with a synthetic hybrid field, we can get up to 319 days a year use of this particular field surface. They have run numbers that said if you had no rain throughout the entire year, which is unrealistic, but if you had no rain on a grass field, you could get a maximum of 205 days. But if you had rain, and rain comes mostly in the summer season when most of the dates would be booked, And so if you have rain, you're going to cut the number of days from 205 to much less than that for wear and tear and for rain. You're probably looking at 150 event days a year with a grass field. We can double the number of days and events that we can use Memorial Stadium for if we partner with the county in this fashion. So that's kind of the high-level view of where we are and what we've done with the county. And I want to thank Mark personally because he's been a great advocate and a great partner to get to this point at this time. We have, again, highest level of field accessibility, widest variety of stadium community use options. It supports growth in the tourism industry, and we have a schedule here that talks about the action that we would ask for you to take. Recommend that City Council authorize the city manager to negotiate and execute an interlocal agreement with Mecklenburg County with the terms that we described, and the timetable is next. Back in 2016, March 20th, 2018, the county approved the 31.7 with an opportunity to partner with the city. Today, April 26th, May 14th, and May 30th are the 2 dates we plan on being in front of City Council if you are so inclined today to move this forward.
Thank you, Mr. Kimball. I'm going to yield first to the district rep, what Memorial Stadium resides in. Mr. Larkin, District 1.
So our colleague, Councilmember Bakari, left behind a question which I'll ask before I ask my own. And as is typical for the distinguished District 6 representative, it is not brief. So I'll do my best to paraphrase. I made him write it down, but that didn't help. So I'll try to paraphrase. What I think what he means, if we theoretically were not to invest this money, but wanted to rent use of the stadium, what would be the typical cost per rental of Memorial Stadium once completed, and how much tax revenue on average is generated from the dates that we might use the stadium for? He's essentially trying to calculate a return on investment and payback period for the 75 days use we would have over that 15-year period.
I will answer it this way. There is an agreement with the Charlotte Independents and Charlotte Hounds that how they enter this picture with the county is they are paying a per game rent amount, and they also pay a portion of the concessions and the revenue that the independents earn. Now, if I ask Mark, he's got to come to the microphone because you have to be on record. That's right. But if you could say what that rent amount is per game for the independents, if that's public at this point.
Yes.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate you being here.
By the way, thank you for all the kind compliments. I will tell you, all of you are wearing quarterback jerseys. I don't know if that was.
I'm not.
You got a cornerback.
Cornerback.
Yeah.
And I've got a son who's a dentist in New Orleans who's the sole Panther Foundation in the Sea of Saints. So hopefully he'll be happy with my jersey. The independents are going to be an anchor tenant. Okay. Their deal with us is that they will pay an annual fee, which is $185,000, which goes up every year by 3%. They will pay per game rent of $8,800. They have revenue sharing with us, which is a 15% revenue share deal. And they also will contribute to the future capital needs through like a Ticketmaster type agreement where when you buy your ticket package, a fee is charged on that as well.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Mr. Luck.
And Ron, the second part of that was, do we have an estimated amount? And again, obviously it's going to vary wildly from one event to the next, but do we have an expected average revenue amount tax-wise on any date that this is used?
We don't as yet, because we'd have to benchmark it against the type of events that our 5 rent-free use days are for us getting those rent-free use days. So obviously we'd want to pack the house. But also I think there's a return on twice the number of use days with a synthetic field than you would get if you had a grass field. We can do some calculations of that. It's going to be a significant number, and over 15 years it will far exceed the $3 million up front that we would pay on that. But we'll do some detailing of that. It'll be estimates because we don't know exactly what events we would book there.
And then, Mr. Chair, a quick question and comment of mine, if I may. has the county or the city engaged, I'm sure you have to some degree, the Historic Landmarks Commission, as this is a designated historic landmark, and if so, what has their feedback been on the design?
We have. The feedback on the design is they want to incorporate as many of the architectural features and historic features that make sense. You know, they may not be in the same form they are today, but certainly they will be visible representations and reminders of the purpose of the stadium.
And then my comment would just be simply that's my one concern on this project, is making sure that we get the historical context right, because I do think there's a lot of history there and it needs to be honored and maintained as best possible. Pending that kind of being satisfactorily, having trouble, thank you, Justin, resolved, I would encourage, I don't have a vote on this, obviously, as I'm not a member of the Economic Development Committee. I would encourage my colleagues on the Economic Development Committee to strongly consider bringing this forward to the full council with your recommendation, because I think that this stadium's proximity to the streetcar, to the greenway, between the Elizabeth community and Uptown, I think reactivating what has been an inactive site for a while now is going to be incredibly valuable to that area and the city as a whole, as well as helping to feed traffic onto Greenway streetcar and other infrastructure investments we've made. So I'm very excited about this, pending that we resolve the historic elements of it, and would hope that you would support this. So.
Thank you, District Rep. Ms. Mayfield, and then the good doctor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ron, I have a couple of questions for you. Although we say that it'll be just a one-time fee for the city, how often does synthetic turf have to be replaced?
Typically around year 10 to 15, depending upon usage.
And what you're saying, that contractually moving forward 10, 15 years, that it will be the county's responsibility to do that?
That is correct, and that's part of why we are, charging the independents a capital fee to help assist in that refurbishment at that time.
Thank you, and actually it'll probably be a tag team, because you'll probably have more direct answers for me. Do we know what is going to be the impact to the students of Central Piedmont if this were to move forward? Because that parking deck, which is relatively new, that's closest to it is where a lot of the students park. So what is going to be the impact to the CPCC students?
We have an agreement with CPCC in terms of parking. Obviously, we're going to be revisiting that agreement to ensure that both parties and the neighborhood will be satisfied that there will be ample parking as well as control during the events, particularly the major events. So we're very cognizant of the parking situation, and we're working with them.
So I'm going to clarify that a little more. It's great to have a conversation with the administration of CP. I would hope that somewhere in these conversations, whether the students have identified a representative, but those who are actually going to be impacted should be a part of the conversation, if possible.
We will do that and make sure that that gets done. This will be opening about the time that the new streetcar line is opening with the new streetcar.
I can't take a streetcar in the town from where I live at. So, I mean, it's great. I would just like for us to make sure that there's conversation with the actual students for impact, because we do have a lot of students that drive and not all are on public transportation.
And there are additional parking decks that don't get utilization at night, that now will get utilization at night because of their close proximity to the stadium. But you're right, we need to work through all this and assure that students, faculty, business owners, and residents in the area are not severely impacted by additional traffic in the renovation.
So, Mr. Kimball, this question you will be able to help me with, because we talk about the 5 free rent use days. How many venues do we currently have where the city has a contractual obligation where we have access to free rent days?
We have it at BB&T Ballpark. We have it at our NFL Stadium, Bank of America Stadium. We'll have it here. And there may be some joint use opportunities inside the arena. And then we own Bojangles, and Ovens. And so I would say there's probably 5 or 6 different venues where we have the ability to have some say-so in the events.
So
that
to
occur.
follow up, the additional to that, because we've had this conversation with other projects that we've done, how many of those days are we actually utilizing?
Oh, we're using-
Because
yeah.
I know previously, we said we have access to them, but the cost to actually open the building,
Right.
turn on the lights, and all of that has been cost prohibitive. So how often are we actually utilizing it?
In Bank of America Stadium, where we have been averaging 3 of the 5, the Belk Bowl plus 2 others, international soccer friendlies, and the Labor Day college football game, which this year is Tennessee and West Virginia, which is going to be a complete sellout.
So 3 of the 5 at B of A?
Right, we're using most of the days at BB&T Ballpark for the community events that are held there, walk, runs, all the different events, community events that we're hosting there. We have tens of events at Bojangles and Ovens that we control and bring in the community to partner with us, from graduations to other civic and community fundraisers and events. And the arena is a joint with the Hornets, bringing in such major events like the NBA All-Star Game, CIAA, the ACC Basketball Championship, and others that we work. So there's not a specific number of days. It's a joint, let's work together to make sure we can put those in there. BB&T, I think there's 15 in BB&T, because we pay a part of traffic control is CRVA's relationship with BB&T Ballpark.
So let me ask a clarifying question on what you just stated, because when we say 5 rent-free days, and we talk about all of our other partnerships, when we say rent-free, this isn't necessarily a community good where the community gets access to this venue for free. This is us getting access to partner to bring a group in, and that organization, which is a private business, has access to have an event, but they're still charging for the event. Because you mentioned the NBA All-Star, and I'm like, there's nothing free about that weekend.
So let me just say that we are suggesting that we use tourism funds here. Tourism funds are geared towards bringing additional visitor spending from outside the community. If we were putting general fund money in here, there would be a stronger connection to making sure that we can do things for the community that's very affordable. But I think Memorial Stadium is going to be affordable. I think that's the beauty of this partnership with the county. It isn't a really large venue. It is more affordable and community-focused, and we can, as part of our 5 rent-free use days, put community-type events. But visitor spending is why we really can put tourism dollars as the up to $3 million. And that's a partnership not only with the county, that's a partnership with the hospitality and tourism industry, who is watching all the moves that we make and wanting to be sure that if we use tourism dollars, we're growing tourism and visitors to our community. So
The final question, Mr. Chair. When ultimately the request is for $3 million.
Up to
3 million, of which, when the county was having these conversations last year, because for new council members, we started off giving a background of the conversation regarding the original dollars never made its way to full council, so we never had a conversation about it. So this is one of the first times that we're really having a conversation regarding this whole stadium piece. But if we're saying up to 3 million, I would like to know how else could these tourism dollars, this 3 million, be used based on our city's contractual obligations, looking at the connector between the Westin, the upgrades that we are committed to for the convention center. What obligations do we have that this 3 million can be spent on, and or what of any of our obligations will not be completed in the original timeline given to council if we allocate this 3 million?
I'll do my best job right now in giving you a dual answer. I'll say it like I did a year and a half ago when the connector project between Ovens and Bojangles came before you. That is council's prerogative to decide if any of those dollars get shifted over to tourism. And that prerogative still exists with or without this $3 million. That is your prerogative to do. I will tell you that when we do debt modeling on all the projects that are out there, And believe me, we've got Discovery Place, we've got the next round of improvements to Spectrum Center, we've got the Blumenthal Performing Arts Center, we've got a Convention Center Hotel, we've got expansion to the Convention Center, we have Bank of America Stadium that we have to worry about as we get a new owner. We have lots of items that need to be addressed in the tourism category. $3 million in our debt modeling, there's a margin of tolerance and difference of plus or minus $5 million. The beauty of this is it's a low dollar amount, and we wouldn't be bringing this forward to you if it was the 8.33 million right now, because then you start to talk about, okay, you're getting into a little bit more money, and that could have a little bit of an impact. But at $3 million, the tolerance factor in the debt modeling is plus or minus $5 million. It is real money. I will never say that $3 million is not a lot of money. Don't ever think that I'm saying that. But in relation to all the other projects, it's a relatively low dollar amount.
So I would like for my colleagues to take into consideration what was just shared, that we have multiple contractual obligations already today. And even if what we're saying is this is a one-time ask, adding an additional line item, whether this line item was 300,000 or 3 million, when we already have contractual obligations, I would like for us to consider, because we still have a conversation that happened in 2014 where our colleague, unfortunately, he has not been able to make it in, probably caught in traffic. The vice chair of the committee talked about where council approved CIP dollars for a project. That was a hotel tourism funded project. And where that project, unfortunately, for multiple reasons, was not able to move forward. We're still having conversations about, okay, do we get our CIP money back? So there's multiple moving parts in this. And for consistency's sake, because before it even, we had a real conversation about it, I had concerns about the city getting involved in this particular conversation. But I want to make sure that you all heard, we have a number of contractual obligations already out here. So even though we say 3 million isn't a big number in comparison, that's 3 million less that's going to go to something else. And then 6 months from now, when we're asked to fund something else, you may or may not remember that we may have allocated 3 million in April.
Mr. Kimball.
And not denying and disputing anything you said, Councilmember Mayfield, the word contractual, I want to address that. There really is only one contractual obligation left, and that's the arena, because we have that until 2028. The rest of them are choices by council. You can set the priorities.
So I love the fact that we say that they're choices by council, but these are, so they may not be contractual, but they're unwritten obligations that we have. So I just want us to be cognizant of these dollars that we're talking about, even though they're hotel tourism dollars.
Right.
We get that. But there's still conversations that previous councils have had regarding development and us investing in current projects that we have. And now here's an ask for us to identify for an additional, when we already know that there is a conversation regarding the convention center, that there is upgrades that are needed, that we have things that we need to have real conversation about, and that we've started conversations on.
Yes.
Here is an additional request. May not seem like a lot, but what may not happen later on because of this 3.
So let me do a check-in. It's 1:35, and committee, I know some of us got a basketball game, but that's not the 3 o'clock, so we okay. Coach, can we hang in there at least to 2 o'clock?
You good, Coach? I'm out after this agenda item, but as long as y'all are there at 3 o'clock.
Okay. Good, doctor. Can we go to 2 o'clock? I'm just doing a time check-in.
Yeah.
LaWanda, can we go to 2? Staff? Okay. So then let me go Dr. Hollow and then Councilmember Winston.
We just do our stretches in here. So thanks for this presentation, and I had a few questions. Some of them got kind of answered. One was about just the historic nature around construction and stuff, and so Larkin kind of hit that one. But I'm curious, so is there no, I know you talked about expanding the field footprint. There's just zero opportunity to preserve kind of the main bones? You just can't do it?
Right. The stone wall is in a place right now that confines the field size. It has to be removed in order to create the bigger field footprint.
Just needed to hear that, I guess. And secondly, are we changing the level of capacity in the space? I mean, what are we starting with and where are we going to?
We are adding a little bit more capacity, but not significantly more. You know, it will be a flexible 12,000-seat arena, but flexible in terms of multi-purpose use, particularly for concerts and other things.
Okay. We asked about the length of how long the lifeline of the turf. I guess I first, and this is maybe if somehow we can get a table, kind of to Ms. Mayfield's point a little bit of just what are the obligations or the contracts or whatnot.
Or the asks.
Right. What are the asks?
Upcoming spends.
What are we in for on in these other venues? And then really a little bit of a comparison of how that maps out. You know, this is $3 million for 15 rent-free days, right? How does that compare? How does that stack up to some of the other sites that we have? And then lastly, since this is up to $3 million, does the 5 days, regardless if we get up there, is there going to be some, you're prorating that down if we don't?
Don't. No, we have agreed on 5 rent-free use days for up to $3 million.
Councilman Winston.
I got a couple of questions that are really concerns of whether or not we should vote on spending this money on this project. So my first concern is as an athlete about playing on this turf, that it might be cheaper, but there are questions about safety on playing on this stuff. I think if you look at the research quantitatively, there's not anything that's going to say definitively whether that this is as safe as playing on grass or not. But I can tell you as an athlete that has played on grass and played on turf, there's a distinct preference and a fear of playing on these surfaces. And that doesn't always come into account. We know in professional sports that athletes don't necessarily get a say in these kinds of things. If you look at the recent World Cup, though, that there was a petition by many World Cup athletes that they did not want to play on this type of surface. If you look at our own Bank of America Stadium, our current owner and founder, Mr. Richardson, he was pretty adamant about keeping it grass. As a former athlete himself, I'm sure it's not just nostalgia for the way things were, but there are real concerns about this. And we always I always like to consider putting people over potential profits, including our athletes that we're going to ask to play on this. And I have a question about workforce development in terms of when we invest public dollars into professional sports infrastructure. One of the questions is that return on investment in terms of jobs. I've worked in this industry since 2004, and you know, in the old Coliseum, in the new arena, in the stadium, and I can tell you there are very few jobs that people can support themselves on full time that come out of this. When I think of a grass field, a grass turf, that is a skill, a workforce pipeline, especially as it exists right next to a school that might be able to create a program surrounding turf management, which is a very transferable and a valuable skill. Just ask the folks that work over at Quail Hollow. What you know, what that skill pays and is worth. I would say that perhaps turf management is one of the one potential career paths that we would be eliminating and skill sets that we can work on by putting this artificial turf down. Again, putting people over potential profits. I question the need for double the days that are available for use on this field. I work for the Independents. I run camera for them. I think at the most we would have potentially 17 home games or something like that. The Hounds would play less than that. So that is at about 25 or 30, and if you're looking at 105 versus 200, where would you necessarily fill the rest of those days? I don't see how that is necessarily a logical decision in spending this money. Specifically, as you look around at this design, where's the shade? Have you ever been to Memorial Stadium in the summer months? Have you ever sat down and tried to even sit through the high school football game that gets played there in the early months of fall? It's miserable. This does not look like a design that is going to be desirable, specifically during our long, hot, humid summers, for folks to convene in an open-air, non-shaded stadium, especially one that is filled with black rubber pellets. That the heat that emanates from that increases, especially, again, when you have athletes that are down on the ground playing in that. Again, thinking of people over profits. Do we need turf? We're not an upper Midwestern state or city. We can grow grass pretty much all year long, especially, again, if you have the technology and manpower working on it, or the person power working on that. We grow things. It rains, grass grows here in Charlotte. And so I would also say, you know, you mentioned that this bucket of tax dollars is specifically put there so that it can increase visitor spending. I would ask, well, how does paying for a turf field increase visitor spending versus a grass field? I don't see anything that here right now, in my opinion, and I'm not on the Economic Development Committee, as I kind of think through those things, there's not much there that's compelling to say that we need to spend this money on this particular project.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay.
If I could respond.
Yes.
I listened and absorbed. Thank you for your comments. The turf fields, the synthetic turf fields now are so much improved over what's been happening in the past. And there's a lot of hybrid with real grass and synthetic together. It's a specialty and needs a lot of care and can be a kind of job opportunity for the new wave of fields that are coming forward. But they are becoming even more improved so that they do have the player comfort at the same time they've got the wearability and durability. And we've investigated these along with the Charlotte Independents and Charlotte Hounds, and the Charlotte Independents have agreed that this is suitable for them, the FIFA 2 compliant. It's not just a pure synthetic field. It has some comfort for the players and injury-free to the players as
Again,
well.
I would ask, you mentioned those are all organizations. I would talk to players. That's two different entities.
Understand, yeah. And I think the economics of what we're suggesting is we believe we can get the most community benefit as well as increased visitor spending and use tourism dollars for it, but we can get a double bang for the buck. We can get the kind of visitor spending that they would want in the hospitality and tourism industry, but we're able to support massive numbers of community events of our local citizens that will really take advantage of the 319 days. So I hear about profits over, you know, the comfort and what you suggested, but I think the local folks in Charlotte, Mecklenburg are going to be advantaged by being able to take advantage of this number of days that you can use that stadium with this kind of field compared to a grass. And it's an opinion, and I'm just giving you a perspective from those who have negotiated with the Hounds, the Independents, and trying to think about the community and how we can help our community.
Mr. Herring?
Chair, if I could add to that, one of the other components is this notion of recovery time, where the field requires days to rejuvenate back to a certain level of turf. And so I think maybe another way of thinking about it is you can have an event on Friday night, you can have an event on Saturday night, and it could be a concert, it could be a football game, but they all can occur back to back to back instead of having that, 3, 4, 5 day, whatever that window is for.
Just,
for restoration.
just to follow up again, I understand you could, but what is the likelihood that that is going to happen? It's not very likely.
That's our fault.
The soccer team doesn't play too many back-to-back days. As Ms. Mayfield said, we have the stadium and the baseball field. How often do these things happen? In baseball, they play many more games than all of these folks. And I understand recovery time, but what is actually on the radar of actually happening in terms of those circumstances?
Everybody's. So let me, if I can, and I promise to do it in 5 minutes. So I'm going to be unapologetic for supporting the $3 million as your chair of economic development. I've talked to most of the stakeholders from the HTA community to the county about this collaborative effort. And I will ask this committee to think in those terms. How do we continue to work with the county? I think this is a great olive branch for us to work together. There are some other asks in the future that the city and the county need to work on. When you talk about the $3 million, it's a big change from the 8.3. Ron, I do like the fact you say this is not to 2021 and we are the last money. So not the first money, we're the last. So when we put in the field, Braxton, you're a former athlete, so I'm being very sensitive to your point about how do the athletes feel. So I'm hoping the Hounds and the soccer team, the players have kind of weighed in as well to get some perspective. How do you feel now playing on this type of turf? The last thing I would say too is the other requests we have out there. So I know we have, there's a hotel out there toward one of the fine universities. There's an ask there. There's an ask for a Discovery Place. There's another ask for Panthers upgrade and the Spectrum Arena.
And Convention Center?
Oh, it was already taken care of. We already approved $110 million for the Convention Center.
That's right.
So I will say this, it's our decision around this table. What do we think is a good return on our investments, and how should we spend our tourism dollars? I've always said, to the point, Ms. Mayfield was having a little debate about those 5 free activities. It's on us to fill those venues. They're there, and if we don't use them, it is our responsibility. I think we just announced about the soccer stadiums coming in. We talked about the Labor Day football game. I know there's conversation, Battle of the Bands leaving Memorial Stadium and going to Bank of America. But elected officials, it's on us to find those activities that we can use, and the rent of Bank of America is $250,000. And so we need to get creative and say, how do we use those? They're there. Why are we not taking advantage of it? So let me make sure I'm in protocol. Can I make a motion, or I have to give up the gavel? Oh, I can't make a motion? Okay. So I'd like to make a motion that we move forward in partnership with the county, and we spend the $3 million for Memorial Stadium renovation.
Second.
It's moving properly second. Questions? All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Opposed.
Okay. Let it be shown as 3-1 in opposition. 3-1 in favor of spending $3 million. That'll be our recommendation to the council. And the district rep was here for feedback.
Thank you all.
Coach, I know you about to go.
Yeah, I gotta stretch more than y'all do. So
Nancy.
Wait, gentlemen, it's not over. Our committee meeting's not over yet.
I don't think we're going to touch
Nancy, I know you're going to be mad at me, but Deborah, Randy, can we put a disparity study back to May 24th? Oh,
The very first item.
yeah. You at a conference? You good doing without the star? Okay.
I'd be good doing it without the star.
Okay. Okay. So then let us go to the, it is Small Business Month in May. I would like for everyone to get a report. Christy Floyd has done a great job. So Christy, if you can give us a rundown.
Hey everybody, I'm Christy Floyd with Economic Development.
Right.
How are you doing today? Well, I wanted to remind you that the first week in May is National Small Business Week.
Right.
But here in Charlotte, we celebrate all month. So in your packet, you have the calendar for May. I wanted to just point out a few things to you. In the month of May, we are spotlighting one business a month, or a day,
Okay.
for the whole month of May on charlottebusinessresources.com. It's our hashtag 31 Days of Biz contest. Our resource partners have nominated businesses, and we'll be showcasing one a day for the whole month of May. And I know you all are on social media, so go on there and retweet our tweets and share our posts and get the word out about the great businesses here in Charlotte. Second thing I wanted to tell you about is, you know, the Black Enterprise Entrepreneur Summit's coming up in June. We are giving away 10 scholarships to that event.
Black
And we're doing that
Enterprise.
through Charlotte
That's
Business
right.
Resources. 5 are from the city and 5 are from Mr. Lenny Springs. And we're coming together to give those away. So the contest is featured on our homepage. The contest closes on May the 4th. So we need you to help us get the word out about that so we can get lots of entries to that contest. And then the last thing I want to remind you about, and you need to put this on your calendars, go ahead and get them out. May 1st is our kickoff event for Small Business Month.
Tuesday.
We're hosting an event at 5:30 p.m. on Tuesday next week at Resident Culture. We've already had almost 300 businesses registered to attend that event. So we would love to have you all there too. Some other things that are happening from the city, you know, the city always has the Mayor's International Community Awards, and that's going to be on Thursday, May the 3rd. And then the Charlotte Mecklenburg Crowns of Enterprise Awards is on Thursday, May the 10th. So there are 3 city events, so we'd love to have you at.
So Christy, one feedback, I agree with Councilmember Mayfield. The mention of the scholarship is not on here.
Yeah, so this is a calendar of events. It's not talking
Okay,
about that. So the
got it.
scholarship is an online program. So it's on our homepage
Oh, it's on our homepage, so we
for
just,
charlottebusinessresources.com.
Got it.
Have we tweeted it out?
Oh, it's been all over there. Yeah, check us out. Look on Charlotte Business Resources, also Economic Development. Social media has it out there too. You can retweet and share from there.
Christy, thank you. Any questions, committee?
We'd love to have you guys there.
No
May
questions.
1st, 5:30.
So thank you, Chris. Let me close by saying this. Committee, thank you all for your patience. As you can see, we did a lot of heavy lifting today, and we got another board meeting May 24th. I appreciate Mayfield, Newton, and Holler, because this is not easy, but I think we did a lot of good work here, and staff really look at room 267. I just hate when we can't have everybody together, if it's available. Or what's the next largest room, 280? Is 280 bigger than this one?
No.
Also, this is, okay. Let me go around, make sure we have anything else. Councilmember Mayfield, we good?
No, sir, we are great.
Mr. Newton? You to go? Charlotte? Okay. Deborah?
This will may be my last meeting.
No. I was gonna talk about that.
I appreciate it.
No, that's not in contract. You didn't see the memo.
Evidently, I didn't see it. Okay, thank you all, appreciate your hard work.
And I was gonna say, I think this might be Ms. Campbell's last meeting, and I would tell you all know it, because y'all work with me. It's not hard, working with Councilmember Mitchell, couple my hyperness, but, I would say.
He admitted it's not hard. He did that on purpose.
Deborah, I would say, thank you for making me a better chairman of economic development and understand the importance of process and being patient. You know my little hyper self, I always want to do things, so I'm gonna miss you, but you still just a mobile text away.
You got it.
All
No
right.
cheer?
Nothing.
No cheer.
No cheer?
Thank you.
Okay. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Sir.
You'll still be coming to hand committee.